The Radical Greens abortion bill by Dr. Amanda Cohn, former abortionist, wants to transform midwives into abortionists. Today, I have a very special guest who's going to speak about her experience as a midwife and her reaction to this horrific bill. And that's today on the Dr. Jo Show. Amanda Cohn's bill will transform midwives into abortionists. As a midwife, how does that make you feel?
Sad. Yeah, it makes me feel sad. The reason that I went into midwifery, obviously, I was a nurse initially, and then I had a passion for helping women in that very vulnerable time of bringing babies into the world. And I wanted to help women and be with women in a what's mostly a very joyful time. And I feel that I never even considered that abortion would be a part of it. I thought that that was something that women could do if they wanted to do, but there were people that had signed up to help them do that. Never would I have thought that I would sign up for something like that, and I never really want to be honest.
Cohn will say that her bill allows midwives to opt out, but do you feel that it fundamentally changes the idea of a midwife to have midwives not just birthing babies but killing them?
I think that whether she likes it or not, what it will create is an environment of expectation that midwives will carry out those duties. And whether it's a matter of staffing issues, you know, what if there's no staff on the ward that want to do it? Well, then someone has to. Or if it's any other matter, I think she would be crazy to deny the fact that midwives will feel pressured to do those things when they don't want to.
Are you often short-staffed?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a question nobody needs to ask. We're always short-staffed.
Yeah.
That's always part of the problem.
And so you could see a situation where even though you don't want to perform abortions as a midwife, there would be a tremendous pressure to do that.
Yeah. In some scenarios, yep, for sure.
If you were in that situation, would you perform an abortion?
No.
And why is that?
There's no pretty way to put this, but I don't ever want to take a life. I never ever want to, and I never ever will. And that's my personal moral choice because I think it's wrong. I will never force my opinion on someone else, but I feel that I deserve that right.
Do you think that this could lead to an exodus of nurses and midwives from the industry?
It's funny that you say that because that was one of the things that I had considered, you know. It seems to me that the same people that are crying out for more staff are forcing the staff potentially to do things that they don't want to do. And I can't speak for other people, but what will I do if I happen to be in scenarios where I am feeling pressure to do those things? I will have to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that serious to you, your conscientious objection to abortion, your opposition to it, that you would leave your career of how many years?
About 6 years.
Wow, yeah, so 6 years and then the training before that.
Yeah.
You would leave 10 years of midwifery then if you combine the education.
I would have no choice but to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been in a ward when abortions have taken place?
Yeah, I have.
And what's that been like?
I remember being on my first day as a midwife in training, being handed over a poor woman who had had an abortion and just being horrified that I felt naive at the time, but I was thinking I didn't even know this was allowed. You know, these babies were 20-something weeks and
20-something weeks.
Yeah, and they were twins, and it was awful.
Yeah.
Not for me, for that woman, you know, who was sent home the same day. It was a terrible reality that I didn't know was already there. it was like a dagger in the heart for me, you know.
Yeah, as a student, that must have been a shock.
Yeah, and also it scared me. Like, I remember feeling scared that day that, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was part of it, but I'm already here and I really want to be here. So is that what I'm going to have to do? And if so, then how am I going to get my way out of that? So I felt nervous about that.
At that gestation, after 20 weeks, typically the baby is delivered, but delivered stillborn.
Yeah.
The only other way is to extract them in pieces using metal forceps. Either way, it's just really
Traumatic.
Yeah. Have you ever spoken to co-workers about late-term abortion and their feelings around it? Does it ever come up?
It's come up. I've tried to stay away from those conversations because I know that they're very controversial. And, you know, I have never really wanted to impose my views on people. It's very out of character for me to even be here speaking out, but I feel that I have to. I've had one or two conversations about it, where I've sort of nudged it, or I won't ever be doing that, and people are a little bit taken aback that not actually that you wouldn't do it necessarily, but I think more that you would stand up.
Yeah, to say that. Can I ask you, does it take some courage and strength to say I don't want to be involved in abortions when it is now becoming part of the practice of midwifery and nursing?
Absolutely, yeah. I feel that going forward, if this happens, I've always tried to stay out of the limelight in this area, but if this goes forward, I will have no choice but to speak out, which I feel uncomfortable about. I think it will make other people feel uncomfortable, but that's what I will have to do, and it will take, for sure, a lot of courage on my part to do that.
So just to clarify for people watching, because they might be wondering, well, what's the difference with Amanda Cohn's bill, given that you've just referenced an abortion that occurred in your hospital? So if you're watching and listening in, and feel free to butt in if I'm getting any of this wrong, but my understanding is in New South Wales, abortion is legal up until birth, as it is in every state and territory in Australia. And when a late-term abortion happens, they inject the baby's heart with potassium chloride or digoxin. It's a poisonous substance that kills the baby, it creates a cardiac arrest. But midwives don't do that. That's the obstetrician that is doing that, the maternal fetal medicine specialist. So they kill the baby, but then the baby has to get delivered, and so they give the mother misoprostol and mifepristone, and then the labour's induced, and so a midwife is actually the person that delivers that dead baby. So they're a stillborn baby, and so as a conscientious objector, I'm assuming at the moment you don't participate in the delivery of dead babies. Would that be correct?
I would participate in stillborn babies, yes, who had not been aborted.
Who had not been aborted. So ones that have occurred naturally, and it's not an intentional thing. But there would be midwives already who perhaps feel pressured to be part of even a late-term abortion.
Of course.
Maybe they don't feel as confident as you to conscientiously object and to say that they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I've certainly actually interviewed a midwife in SA who was part of one of the first late-term abortions of a healthy baby in SA, and she was in tears. And she said actually the whole ward was just really shocked because they hadn't even realised the law had changed and you could kill a healthy baby that late in pregnancy.
Yeah, I think it would be crazy to deny the fact that these abortions are not just impacting the women that are having them, but they are very seriously impacting the people who are doing the delivery as well. That's an image that you can't really forget.
Yeah, and Amanda Cohn's bill, the intervention, the change that it brings in is it actually involves midwives doing the intentional killing. So in a late-term abortion, midwives are almost like accessories in that they're delivering the deceased baby who's been intentionally killed, so different to a natural stillborn. But in this Greens bill, what it would do is it would force midwives and nurses to become the abortionist. So a woman comes to you and says she wants to have an abortion, and you would actually give her the drugs. She would take the first pill in your presence, and then the second pill she would take it home, and she would deliver her baby into the toilet in her bathroom or onto the bathroom floor by herself, and it can. I think there's a 6% complication rate, so it's reasonably high compared to other methods of abortion. It's not a particularly safe method, but it does turn the midwife into the killer. What is your view on that?
I think it's scary that that's where midwifery has arrived at.
Yeah.
That is not a part of, I believe, a good midwifery care where you're looking out for the best interests of the mother and the baby. I understand that there are complicated circumstances. I also understand that people will do things that I don't believe in. But why then do I have to do things that I don't believe in? It just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah. I mean, something people are saying is, how come politicians are getting a conscience vote on this Amanda Cohn bill? And
if I can't get a conscience vote,
they're choosing to use their conscience to stop you having the freedom to exercise yours.
Right.
Did you ever imagine that you could work in a health system where that could happen?
No. Maybe I was naive. I didn't even know that this really happened when I first went in. I thought that it was all for the good of the woman and the child. And so I was, a bit scandalised when I realised it was already happening, but realised that I would have to navigate my way around that, and that just has become harder and harder. And now with this bill, what am I going to do? I don't really know how I'm going to steer away from it. Aside from having to leave the profession, if that's where we get to.
Yeah. The Premier himself has said he thinks it will actually strain healthcare access in regional and rural areas where they're already stretched. And yet Amanda Cohn said this is about access. In your view, does that make sense in your experience?
I believe that if a woman, in my experience, if she wants an abortion, she can get one. I've been on both sides, so I've been on the midwifery side and I've been on the patient side, where I have seen women come in asking for abortions as a midwife, and they have received one. And I have come into a hospital with a terminal diagnosis of a baby in utero, and I have been asked, the first question I was asked when my baby was diagnosed was, would you like an abortion? So in my experience, that's just my experience, but there does not seem to be a problem with access.
And that concurs with what we're being told, that the abortions are publicly funded. You can go to a public hospital and get an abortion. So you can get an abortion via telehealth. So even if you don't have someone in your neighbourhood, you can zoom in that abortion. So when I look at this, what I think Cohn's real agenda is, it's about removing the right of individuals and institutions to object to abortion. And that's because, as an abortionist herself, she can't brook the concept that people would be opposed to it, because if they're opposed to it, it is a moral judgment that there's something gravely wrong. And it's almost like they want to remake the system, society, culture, healthcare, so that abortion is just seen as any other kind of medical treatment.
That's right. And maybe me becoming an abortionist makes the other abortionists feel good about themselves. But if someone opposes you, I suppose people see that as a threat. But I would also argue that isn't that just life? There are always people with different opinions, and in the midwifery world too, and in the medical world too. And isn't that what makes a good profession? That people have a right to say what they believe and act on it.
I didn't ask you permission to talk about this, so if you don't want to, that's fine. But you just mentioned you were offered an abortion. Did you have one?
No.
Do you feel okay to just tell us a little bit about what happened to you with that child?
Yeah, sure. So our second child, I have 5 children, and my second child was diagnosed at about the 20-week scan with something called trisomy 18. And so at that scan, we were told that she likely had a disability and would we like an abortion? That was one of the first things we were asked. And we said, no, we don't want to go down that path. We're happy to, well, not happy with difficulty and sorrow. We would like to carry the baby to term and allow natural courses to take place, and that's what we did. And of course, there's grief there. So I do really understand that experience too. But would I like to have ended it? You know, in some way for sure. But I never wanted to complicate my own grief, complicate my own love for my child with death. Yeah. Me enforcing that death on her, I just don't think it was the right outcome.
What was her name?
Juliet.
Juliet, that's a beautiful name. And how long did you have with her?
35 weeks.
So you had 35 weeks of pregnancy, and then was she stillborn?
Yeah, she was.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to someone watching who might be in that situation themselves, they've received that diagnosis. Is it Edwards syndrome, or is that?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them?
I would say that grief is how you love someone, and I'm still proud of her, and I'm proud of us that we went down that path and that we loved her until the very last second that we could love her, and we still do. Yeah. And we did everything we could for her. So don't give up hope. It's very, very hard. But sometimes we want to get in there and fix it, you know, and that can just complicate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wonder, because I've interviewed other women who've chosen not to abort in those circumstances, and it's almost like there's a more beautiful healing that comes from not having killed your child, but just actually lived in that uncertainty and that pain, but also being able to embrace that child and connect with that child in the pregnancy rather than prematurely aborting it. Would that be true for you?
I believe so, yeah. I believe that we obviously didn't get to connect with her. We didn't get to meet her face-to-face like we did my other children and see her grow up, but we connected with her in every way we could still. Yeah. And how do you do that as a parent? By loving them. So that's how we connected with her, and there was still a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah, okay. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share or discuss today?
I think the only other thing I would say is just more of what I've said, really, that, you know, the reason that I went in to midwifery was really to help women. You know, there are abortionists out there that can do abortions. Don't make me do one. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.